I dare you, yes, you watching right now, I dare you to try to name a more iconic duo than horror franchises and cranking out as many sequels as humanly possible. I mean, come on. Scream's got 6 movies. Nightmare on Elm Street has 9 movies, I think. Friday the 13th has 12 movies, which, I mean, come on. You guys are missing an opportunity there. At least make one more. For Christ's sake, Halloween has 13 movies. For a bunch of series about killing people, they sure seem to not want to die themselves. Over the past few months, I've been really curious about what makes these series go on forever. I mean, how can all of these horror franchises make more sequels than should be humanly possible with our current understanding of the laws of movieology? Those aren't questions this video today will answer, but it did lead me to check out one of the most evergreen, long-lasting, Homeric epics of our time, the Child's Play series.
Steal this! Steal this! Steal this!
Child's Play came out back in 1988 and spawned 6 sequels, a reboot, and a TV series that just wrapped up its 3rd season earlier this year. But before all of the reinventions of itself, all of the shifting of genres, and all of the bits of lore weaved throughout, there was just one movie about a boy and a killer doll.
Child's Play.
Child's Play started what I'm sure not even the writers themselves knew would become a decade-spanning saga. And I'm gonna be real with you guys, I like this movie. Quite a bit, actually. I have a pretty high schlock tolerance if a movie can manage to be entertaining, either through 1, being good, or 2, being so bad that it is good. And I feel like Child's Play rides that line perfectly throughout. It's so fucking weird in the best way possible, and just as an example, let me give you a little brief rundown of the origin story of how this little terror came into existence.
And on the 8th day, God created Chucky.
A serial killer lies in a toy store, having been mortally wounded by a police officer, and with his dying breaths, he summons a thunderstorm with a chant. Lightning strikes through the glass ceiling above them, striking Grima Wormtongue and the doll. Not only did this lightning bolt plant bomb at B, it also transferred the soul of our serial killer into the doll, a la birthing Chucky. Voodoo magic is real in the world of Child's Play, and because of that, not only is this movie in the horror genre, some are arguing, some being me, this is kind of a fantasy of sorts. I mean, it doesn't have dragons and elves and wizards, but that could be a pretty sick sequel, so please hit me up. What this movie lacks in that category does make up for in having voodoo magic, which is kind of like the fantasy thing, you know? It's not really like a throwaway thing either. If I'm not mistaken, barring the remake, someone tries to or successfully does use voodoo magic in every single one of these movies.
Ate Dewey Dembella. Give me the power, I beg of you!
After the toy store debacle, Chucky ends up in the hands of our protagonist, Andy. Chucky goes on a killing spree, eventually decides he wants to be human again, goes to his voodoo teacher, which, again, kind of like a fantasy trope, he's got like the wizard who's teaching him magic or whatever. The voodoo teacher says that he must perform a ritual with the first person that he revealed his true identity to, which happens to be a little kid, Andy.
I have a date with a 6-year-old boy.
Why? Who the hell knows, man? The voodoo in this world is what we in the business call a soft magic system. We don't understand the rules, we don't know what's going on, we just accept it is the way that it is and move on. Chucky ends up going after Andy, gets killed 2, I think 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, 3 times before he's finally dead for good. Andy and his mom live happily ever after, or at least that's what it seems in the end of this movie. Hey guys, Editor Sid here. I wrote that line in about them living... wanted to clarify something. Andy's mom was sent to a mental but attacked by a killer doll, something that is totally impossible, obviously. Keep getting paid, get that bread, feed their families. Yeah, I mean, peace. What struck me most when rewatching this film and reading up on it for this review were some of the underlying themes that I didn't quite pick up on at first. This movie in particular, and actually the Child's Play trilogy as a whole, has lots of themes of anti-corporation and anti-consumerism weaved into an otherwise kind of goofy story about a serial killer doll. The scene where we're first introduced to our protagonist Andy is a perfect example of this. Andy's watching a Good Guy TV show, which breaks to commercials for Good Guy dolls that you can buy, while pouring Good Guy cereal and wearing Good Guy pajamas. And this didn't really feel all that out of place to me watching it. I grew up in the early 2000s when the Spider-Man trilogy and the Star Wars prequel trilogy were coming out, so mean, we had Spider-Man this and that, Star Wars pajamas and posters and toy lightsabers and action figures and you name it, I probably had it as a kid growing up. Then when I was a little bit older as a teenager, it was like Mountain Dew Game Fuel Halo Edition and Call of Duty Doritos. Like this kind of thing has been going on for a long time. Don Mancini, who is one of the co-writers of this movie and pretty much the steward of the entire Chucky series, grew up seeing his father's work in the advertising industry and understanding how these products are marketed towards children. From a young age, even more so nowadays with kids spending so much time online, we are constantly being inundated with ads everywhere you look. You just can't escape from advertisements these days, unfortunately. And Chucky is part of that whole system. Chucky is very clearly shown as a product being made by a mega corporation who eventually kills people. Like this product is killing people, which, why does that sound a little bit familiar? Also, quick side note here. I was going back and looking through a few particular scenes and I noticed something I hadn't seen until like the third or fourth time now reviewing it. The print on Andy's pajamas and Chucky's clothes has so many weapons hidden in there. There's axes and knives and guns. Like, why is this on children's products? That's kind of funny. I just wanted to point that out. This couldn't be a proper review of a slasher movie if we didn't talk about some of the scenes where these people are laid to their eternal rest. Slashers, by definition, have lots of murder in them, so it can sometimes get a little bit repetitive seeing somebody just get stabbed with a chef's knife over and over and over. And thankfully, Child's Play is able to avoid that by either making these scenes interesting in other ways, or just having like wild over-the-top ways that these characters die. They're able to add a sort of comedy to the film with how dramatic some of these deaths are, and then sometimes are even successful at keeping that like tightness in your chest that like a good, tense horror movie is supposed to give you. Doesn't always do it, but when they do, I think they do it very well. In the first death scene, we see Andy's babysitter frightened, looking for the source of a noise in the kitchen. She's just inching closer and closer and closer to where she thinks it is and pulls it back. And there's nothing there. This moment of relief washes over her face, the tense music stops, we kind of just breathe a sigh all together. She stands up and turns around and freezes. Then wham! Gets hit in the back of the head, takes like a half dozen or so steps back and flies through the window, crashing 6 stories down right on top of a truck. The scene is evolving and morphing in front of our eyes. It's kind of playing with the audience in a way. It's tense and then it'll give you a tiny relief. And then it's tense again, and it might give you a little bit more relief, and then finally, boom! It's like the big finale of it. You finally see the death happen, and then it's kind of so in a way that it makes it hilarious to like think about after the fact. I mean, just watching this back over, she literally flies all the way across the kitchen, tumbles out of the window. And the over-the-top and ridiculous nature of some of these scenes just make it so funny to me. And especially like building it up to being this very tense, very scary, horrible thing, and then just throwing something crazy and dramatic in there, you know, in the climax of that moment just makes it that much more memorable and that much more, I don't know, I just like the way that they play with the audience in that way. Having it both be funny and dramatic and over the top and tense at the same time. They're able to juggle both of these emotions flawlessly, at least in this scene. The second death scene is not nearly as good, unfortunately, but it is kind of funny just because of how ludicrous it is. Chucky turns on a gas stove in this abandoned building and baits Mr. Big Iron here to walk into the kitchen and start firing. And the dude blows up half of this building with this shot somehow, which is the second huge explosion in this movie, which going into it, I wasn't expecting any, so I thought that was kind of entertaining.
We got a #1 victory royale, yeah, Fortnite, we about to get down.
This next section of the video is where I talk about all the nerd shit that I think is cool. This movie's directed by Tom Holland. No, not that Tom Holland, this Tom Holland. Tom Holland also directed another movie a few years before this, starring Chris Sarandon, just like Child's Play, called Fright Night, where Chris Sarandon plays a very sexy vampire, and you've got to watch this yourself to see. I mean, come on, look at this guy. I don't know how he does it. Chucky is voiced by Brad Dourif, who I mentioned a little bit earlier, also plays Grima Wormtongue in the Lord of the Rings series, which is where I knew him from most. Fun fact, Dourif and Sarandon are both Academy Award nominated actors, and they competed against each other for Best Supporting Actor in 1976. but neither of them won, but I think it's just cool that they're both in this slasher film together. To this day, Chucky is still voiced by Brad Dourif in the TV series, and barring the reboot where Mark Hamill took over the role, which is kind of weird to think about, Dourif has been the voice of Chucky throughout the entire thing. Alongside him the entire way has been Don Mancini, who, like I mentioned earlier, was the co-writer of this first film, solo wrote all of the rest of the films and directed the last 3 of them, and then also is the showrunner and creator of the TV series. I don't often get to see the same people continue to work on the same series throughout the entirety of its lifetime. I mean, we're in a world where series go on forever, they're rebooted a million times, passed around from writers to directors to actors. It's just really cool to see them continue to be able to evolve their own creation. As the decades gone on, they've changed as person, the landscape of entertainment has changed, and they're continuing to evolve Chucky and make him still relevant to this day. Don Mancini in particular, other than his first film Cellar Dweller and a handful of guest writing spots in other TV shows, he's worked on nothing but Chucky for his entire career. Almost 40 years now, and almost exclusively working on one character and one franchise. Not that this is like the greatest masterpiece of a series of all time, but it's just so cool to see one person's vision continue to be evolved. And this series really does explore lots of interesting topics, has lots of great ideas, and I think is just a good time all around. To wrap things up here, I think Child's Play is pretty damn good. Gave me a couple laughs, gave me a couple scares, and it just kept me entertained throughout the entire thing. Well, gamers, it's about high time this video comes to an end now. I want to thank you for watching if you made it this far, and you should watch this movie yourself if this sounds like your cup of tea.
All I